Have you ever heard of the term use after free when reading up on vulnerabilities, but struggled to understand just what it means? Well, in this video, I'm going to attempt to break down this fairly complex topic. So I have some code here. Just take a minute, pause the video. Can you identify where the vulnerability is? Now, I did give you a bit of a hint telling you what the bug class is, but let's just step through this code line by line and demystify it. Don't get super scared. Don't get freaked out if this is, your introduction to programming and stuff like that. It could be a little bit difficult, but if we step through it line by line, especially if you have some experience doing basic programming, it shouldn't be too difficult. Basically, we have a struct here, and it has one member called num. And in the main function, this is the entry point. This is what gets run first. So it's going to run in order through all these lines here, 8 through 14. The first thing we're doing is we are defining a pointer. That's what this asterisk means here. And we're just initializing it. And it's called p_unicorn counter. It's a pointer to this struct here. After that, we are going to malloc, so allocate some memory. And with malloc, it's helpful if you know a little bit about what malloc is. Basically, it's used for dynamic memory. So basically, it's memory that is not known what the size of is going to be statically. We don't know it before we compile it. It's going to be dynamic at runtime. So that's what we use malloc for. This is involving the heap because use after free is a heap vulnerability. Now, we'll malloc the size of int and store it, the pointer. This is going to produce a pointer, and we're going to store that pointer in a variable called run_calc. Now, once we get to this line here, all we're doing is we're zeroing out that space. We're just writing a bunch of zeros there. And on this line, we're going to then free that memory. So you have malloc to allocate memory, and you have free to deallocate memory when you're done using it. If you don't deallocate memory, that's where you can get memory leaks, because basically every time you allocate something, this is in C here, you have to manually manage your memory. So when you allocate it, then you got to deallocate it. Otherwise, it's going to keep using system resources, and it's not going to ever free that memory until the program terminates. So that's how actually memory leaks come about, when people forget to free the memory. But there's also another vulnerability when you free it, but you forgot that you freed it, and that's exactly what use after free is. So here we see in the next line, we do another malloc with the size of struct unicorn counter, and this is going to produce a pointer once again, and we're going to store that value in p_unicorn counter, which we initialized already up here. And then in line 13, what we're doing is we're saying, hey, let's assign the value 42 to the num member of this struct. And then this line 14 is where the actual vulnerability occurred. So if you take a pause here for a second, can you guess why this line is vulnerable? I'll give you a second here. The reason that it's vulnerable is because we are actually using this after we freed it. So we freed it here on line 11, and now we're using it here. This is actually going to produce undefined behavior. So if you didn't know that, what would you think that the output of this program would be? So basically, this line here, just to break it down real quickly, is saying that, hey, if this holds a non-zero value, run this code. So do exec_l and basically spawn a shell is what it's going to do. It's only going to spawn the shell if this holds a non-zero value. Now, at face value, you might look at this and say, well, we zeroed it out here, and then we freed it, so it should just be 0, right? Because we never wrote anything to here. It was just 0 the whole time. So wouldn't this be 0, which means that this condition would be false, so this code wouldn't execute? Well, let's take a look by running it ourselves here. So if I run this binary here called UAF, it results in a shell. So I have like a full-on shell here because it ran this line of code. Now, why did it run this line of code? Well, use after free, as I said earlier, but let's dive a little bit deeper to better understand exactly what's happening and why it's happening. And for that, the best tool that you have at your disposal is GDB, the GNU debugger. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to side-by-side this because I think it's going to be a little bit easier if we can reference the source code the entire way. So I'll pull this up here, exit out of this, and then I'll say gdb open UAF. Now let's disassemble the main function because I want to set a few breakpoints here that's really going to drive this home a little bit better. So the first one that's going to be useful is if we look after the malloc. So after the first memory allocation that we're doing here on line 9, right after the call to that, we will set a breakpoint. So let's break at, we'll break main plus 18. And let's see, what else would be useful here? We can see what happens after we free it. So we'll break after the call to free. So break main plus 44. And let's go ahead and we can go ahead and break at the comparison down here with the jump not equal. So break at main plus 76. So with those breakpoints, let's go ahead and run the program. And we hit our first breakpoint here, which is right after the call to malloc. So after we malloc, let's take a look at the state of the heap chunks. So if we do heap chunks, I'm using the Jeff extension, by the way, for GDB. It just enhances it for exploit development and reverse engineering and things like that, and gives me access to things like this where I can inspect the heap easily with heap chunks. And we can see that after we malloc, so after we malloc here for run calc, that is going to be stored at this address here. Just remember this value here, ending in A0. That's all we need to remember. It's of size hex 20, and the previous in use flag is set, and it holds 0. So exactly as we expect, right? This is what we were expecting to see, right? Nothing too crazy yet. Let's continue until we hit our next breakpoint. Actually, let me just take a look here. Actually, let's just continue to hit our next breakpoint. So this is right after the call to free. So right after we free run calc. Let's take a look at heap chunks once again. Now it holds this value here, and you might be wondering, what is this value? Well, actually, if we check the Tcache bins, so let's see here. I think I have it in my history. I forget this one exactly. Yep, heap bin Tcache is how we do it in Jeff. So we take a look at that. Now we see this in the Tcache. And if you don't know what the Tcache is, basically it is a struct for per thread caching. So basically it's something that PT malloc uses, which is the heap implementation of most Linux distributions, including Debian, Kali Linux, Ubuntu, and stuff like that. And it uses this thread caching for basically speeding things up, optimization, stuff like that. That's just how the implementation of the heap is for PT malloc. And for smaller allocations, like this one was of size hex 20, so it's going to use Tcache. Not to get too in the weeds, but if it was a larger size, it would use something else. Like if it was very large, it would use large bins and things like that. But this is smaller, so it's using Tcache. So if we inspect Tcache, after we free something, it would show up here. Now, if we look at this address, what we see, if we look at the heap chunks and then the Tcache bins, we see this value here. But if we just start here, we can see 55555559, and it seems to correspond to, in little endian, this address here, backwards, right? So we see the 59 and then the 55s. So let's continue once again. And now we go to this comparison here, and let's check out the heap chunks now. So this is after, this comparison is after we malloc for unicorn counter, and we set the number to 42. Now all of a sudden, we see this 2A here. Now what is that? Why do we see 2A? Well, 2A, actually, if we go into printf, we can say, show me this in decimal. 0x2a is actually 42. So remember this address, this was the memory location pointed to by run calc. Now it holds the value 42. Well, that's weird. Why does it hold 42? We move that into here, not into run calc. Well, that's actually how the heap works. Because we freed the memory, when we went to make our next memory allocation, it looked and it said, hey, we have this space available here in the Tcache. let's, this memory space is available. Let's go ahead and use it. And so then it reused this space here because it was of a similar size. So if we see here, hex 20, same size. So it saw it as available and it just wrote that value there because it thought, it was already freed. It shouldn't be needed anymore. So now actually the memory address that this was located at, or this was pointing to, I should say, holds the value 42, which is of course non-zero, which is why this evaluates to true and it will spawn the shell. So how could we go about fixing this program to secure it? Let's focus on security holistically here. So if we wanted to fix this program, what we could essentially do is instead of freeing here, we want to free after we're done using the variable. So here I have the same code with the difference of instead of freeing it here, I'm freeing it here. So I've compiled that already in GCC. Let's run this in the debugger and see what are the differences as we step through the code. So let's set some similar breakpoints here by disassembling the main function. And I am going to set some breakpoints, one at main plus 18. So after the first call to malloc, and then we can set one after the second call to malloc as well. So main plus 42. And then let's see, at the comparison, main plus 64. So with those breakpoints set, we'll run the program. We hit the first breakpoint after the first call to malloc. And if we look at heap chunks, we can see what we'd expect to see. This is the address for the run calc. And it's zeroed out. Continue. And now this is after the second call to malloc. So after here, so after we've, we didn't free it here. So it's after the second malloc is made. We look at heap chunks. Now we see there's another chunk next to this. So it's added on. And actually, if we step forward and step again, what we see now is that here is where it's moving the value 42 into there. So right now it's all at 0. It's going to move the value 42 in right here. That's hex 2A. So if we step one more and look at the heap chunks, we can now see that this one, which is different, it's not 2A0, it's 2C0 because it didn't overwrite it because we didn't free it. So this is a whole separate one as we would expect. So this, when we malloced here, it didn't overwrite what we had there because it wasn't freed at that point. So now if we continue, we'll hit our final breakpoint at this comparison here. And if we look at heap chunks, what it's going to do, and by the way, there is nothing in heap bin tcache because nothing was freed. So all tcache bins are empty. And when we look here with the heap chunks is we see that this one, which is where it's what it's comparing here, this if statement, if this one is 0, which as we can see it is, so it's going to skip over this. It's not going to run this condition here, and then it's going to free it afterwards. So here we see that the jump is taken. Last time on the one that is vulnerable, the jump is not taken. So if we just go next, eventually we get the call to free. We just continue to the end of the program. Nothing executes. And we can also confirm that just by running it like this. And we can see no shell. If we run this, we get a shell. So I know this is pretty complex. If you struggled to keep up and understand what was happening in this video, no worries. This is a complex topic. Give it some time. Start studying up on things like the heap and Linux and ptmalloc and stuff. Yeah, just understand that it takes time to learn this stuff. And honestly, if you understand this, you're going to be by far and away ahead of everyone else, certainly that is applying to entry-level jobs, because this is like a little bit above an entry-level topic for sure. But definitely if you arm yourself with a mentor, someone who has been through the process before, that can definitely accelerate you on your journey. So go ahead and fill out the link in the description below on a brief survey, and I can help get you on the path. But aside from that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Let me know what you thought of this more technical video down in the comments section below. I'm always looking to optimize my content for you guys and what you want to see, and I'll see you guys in the next video.